In our last video on closure, we reviewed some very common decision-making methods, as well as recommended searching for consensus. Remember that consensus can be thought of as something between unanimity and compromise. Think of it as agreeing to an acceptable resolution, one that can be supported, even if it's not the favorite of each stakeholder. You may hear the terms collaboration and integrative as styles that can lead to consensus. Both of these terms imply a group of people working together to create a workable solution. That's the mindset you need to work toward a consensus. And you may have to work to get others in that mindset. We'll start this video by suggesting some ways you can create an environment that is conducive to consensus, then offer some additional decision-making methods to help you get there, as well as when to check for consensus, developing a workable proposal, and finally, what you can do to get the agreement reached by consensus actually implemented, creating an action plan. The creation of a consensus-building environment may take some time, especially if your previous interactions were contentious. You may need to acknowledge that, non-judgmentally, as part of your early discussions. Remember to embody the principles of IBA, such as valuing relationships, focusing on interests, having an open mind, and so on. You know that communication is important. It's called out in the IBA principles, not only in being able to get things done efficiently, but in building or rebuilding trust. Consider adopting the following behaviors, maybe working them into some ground rules for discussion. Listen, non-judgmentally, and check to make sure you understand. Paraphrase and clarify. Acknowledge others' communication, both verbal and nonverbal. This shows that you are not only paying attention, but are actively trying to understand them. Be open and authentic, and truthful. Explore minority views and opinions. This may involve encouraging others to contribute, or designating someone to play devil's advocate. Support another's ideas and, if possible, build on them. Combine them to create an elegant solution. Focus on everyone's interests, not just your own, aiming for a win for everyone. In terms of procedure, as you move closer to consensus, follow these general steps. Review the group's vision and goal, and clarify individual and mutual interests. Reassess the constraints to confirm they really are constraints. Flesh out and clarify options. Ask, what is meant by that? And help me see what that would look like. Perhaps more information is needed to make a decision, or some combinations may be possible. Always emphasize that suggestions and options are just that, options. That's something worth considering, or I'm not saying we will do that, but we can keep it on the list for now. Keep in mind, no commitment until commitment is expressed. The group should come to an agreement on which closure techniques they want to use during the process. If they don't, they might disagree with the outcome of the method. Beyond the majority voting and compromise you're probably used to, there are a few other methods we'd like to share with you. When winnowing down alternatives and options, you might use thumb voting or fist to 5. When comparing options, you can try the interest option matrix, and when making a final decision, you might favor ranked or weighted voting. A quick way to visually assess support is to call for the thumbs. Thumb voting. Thumbs up means support, down means oppose. You can even add a third option of a thumb to the side. Maybe. Then count the thumbs. Similar, but with more options, is fist to 5, also very effective for a quick check. You could ask, how is everyone in the group feeling about? And everyone raises their hands, a fist indicating a negative response, up to 5 fingers, 4 fingers and a thumb, to show their level of support. You'll get an idea for support of an option, how people are feeling about the process, if they feel you can move on, any number of things. Once you've narrowed the options, you can use a variation of these methods by comparing how well the interests are met by each of the options, the interest option matrix. Draw a matrix and put the options down the left side and the interests along the top, or vice versa. Then rate how well each option satisfies each interest, using thumbs, fist to 5, or even use high, medium, or low. Then you can review the chart to see which options appear to be the most promising. One problem with the interest option matrix is that it treats each interest as if they are of equal value. In reality, that's not often the case. Some interests may be more important than others. In that case, you can use a little bit of math, like ranked voting, which involves adding everyone's scores. You set up a matrix similar to the interest option matrix, options down the side, and in this case, each decision maker's name listed across the top. Everyone ranks each option based on how well they think it addresses each interest. You can use any number range, like a 0 to 3, 0 is does not satisfy, 1 is partially satisfied, 2 substantially satisfies, and 3 fully satisfies. Or perhaps a 0 to 5 scale. 0 is optional, 2 is desirable, 5 mandatory. Whatever it is, everyone needs to agree on the scale and what it means. Then, total the votes. The ones with the lowest scores are the most promising. Another version is weighted voting. It uses a similar matrix, but this time criteria is listed across the top. These criteria must be developed and agreed to by the group, as well as the weight of each criterion. For example, if you're evaluating job candidates, your group may decide that experience in the field is more important than a formal education. Use a 10-point scale to evaluate experience and a 5-point scale for education. The group then evaluates each option using the agreed-upon weighted scale. Add a cross, and now the options with the highest scores are the most promising. Once you've gotten closure on a decision, it's time to put together a straw design. Draft a proposal. Just do it. Think of a house made of straw. It will not be perfect, maybe not even close to good. Yet. The group reviews the proposal and provides feedback, then revises the proposal with the feedback incorporated into another draft. Now the house is sturdier, perhaps made out of wood, but probably still not perfect. Repeat this process until consensus is reached, with each draft becoming stronger and tougher to criticize. But remember, no commitment until commitment is expressed. Until you call for commitment and get it, it remains just an option. How do you know it's time to call for commitment? Have all of the options been clarified? Check for commitment before you move to the next step. Has the list been evaluated and winnowed down to a reasonable length? Another check before moving on. Does there appear to be a predominant sentiment for one option or a combination of options? If so, check for commitment. A final vote, if you will. But what happens if, when you call for commitment, you don't get it? People may be reluctant to commit due to a lack of shared information, having different values or expectations, feeling rushed, or perhaps some outside factors like anticipating a particular announcement or event. What can you do? Start with reviewing the overall goal. Make sure it hasn't changed and is still a shared goal. Identify and clarify areas of agreement, reinforcing that there is consensus in many areas and addressing uncertainties. Ask for and confirm the source of the disagreements or reluctance. Review the strengths and weaknesses of the shortlisted options. Then, take another consensus check. If you have consensus, the next step is to agree on how to implement your decision. Develop an action plan. Again, as a group. The action plan should identify what resources are needed, human, material, and financial, tasks that need to be completed, and in what order. Create assignments, adding in timelines for completion dates, progress reports, review and approval dates, and so on. Remember to identify who does what and always include some wiggle room. Record the commitments by putting them in writing and distributing them to all of the participants. Email is good if you remember to use an easily searchable subject line. You might also want to place a copy in an electronic archive that everyone has access to. We've given you a few more tools to put in your decision-making toolkit. You've gotten some ways to create an environment that is conducive to developing consensus, a handful of methods, literally, to help you get there, when to check for consensus, developing a workable proposal, and how an action plan can increase the likelihood that your solution will be implemented. We'd like to leave you with one final thought. If handled well, every conflict is an opportunity to strengthen the relationship and make it less likely that you will have a similar conflict in the future. We hope that by adding these tools to your toolbox, you will be able to reap the benefits of handling a conflict well.